It comes from the walls. I was 8 when my brother Josh died. I remember it vividly, even now. Every little detail, from when I woke up until his very last breath. He was 2 years older than me, and we would fight non-stop, like most siblings do. That day was no different. We got up early before our parents did, and raced down the stairs. He won. He always did. And was able to snatch what little was left of the cereal box. I was so mad at him for that. After we had finished breakfast, we ran outside to play. It was a warm summer morning, and I can still image the wall of the heat hitting me as I opened the front door. We played for hours without pause, and remained one of the best memories I have of him. He died around noon. A long drop, a crunch, and a snap. It all happened so fast. I just stood there, frozen, watching as the pond of blood grew, and listening intently at his final wheezing breath left in his broken body. Shock, my parents said. I was in shock. They couldn't get me to speak for weeks. I observed when the ambulance arrived, the paramedics and the firemen running around shouting hysterically, and the sirens dying out in the distance. My mom and dad left, sobbing inconsolably. I stood silent as the funeral came. I held my breath as I lowered the coffin into the awaiting depths. And only after I saw the headstone loom before me could I allow myself to talk again. We moved shortly after the funeral. Mom could no longer stand living in this house. My dad reluctantly agreed, but kept telling her that they would be losing money on sale. Mom didn't care. No amount of money could have persuaded her to stay, to live on the property that stole Josh from her. I knew then that nothing would ever be the same again. The new house was quite a bit smaller than the older one, but I liked it. It was cozy and sweet, and had sort of an old cottage vibe to it. Even though I missed Josh, I was happy to have a bedroom to call my own, to decorate it as my own, to grow up in it. Days, weeks, months passed, and not much changed. There was an aura of gloom around the family, a lingering grief that wouldn't quite let go. It was like the days just faded into nothing, like none of us really were there. Originally, I thought that was the reason it came. It was drawn to our grief, to our constant ever-present sorrow. The first time it came from the walls was 3 months after Josh's death. It was a day like all the others, grey and uneventful, and I had drifted off to sleep later than usual. My body may be somehow aware that there was something unnatural nearby. I awoke in the darkness by an unidentifiable sound, somehow coming from all the walls at once. It was sort of a soft clicking sound, rising in pitch, then lowering again. I had never heard anything quite like it. I sat up in bed, squinting, trying to make out where it could originate from. After a few minutes, my eyes were slowly adjusting to the darkness, and my gaze was drawn to a hole in the wall. It was just a tiny knothole, maybe an inch or two, but for some reason I was convinced it was the source of the sound. I sat there for a few minutes, trembling, just staring into the hole, not knowing why. Then I noticed it started widening, yet inexplainably remaining the same size. I crept under my sheets in fear when the head squeezed through. I just lay there, frozen, unable to move or make a sound. I could hear it moving around there, like it was exploring, searching. I must have stayed under the sheets for hours before I finally passed out. The next morning, I jolted awake with a scream and immediately ran to tell my parents about it. They dismissed it, of course. Just some vivid dream caused by the overactive imagination, they were sure. I tried to reason with them, but soon gave up. They just wouldn't listen. This kept happening for weeks. I would wake up to the soft clicking sound, stare at the hole and hide under my sheets when I saw the head emerge. I could never get a good look of it. I was far too frightened, but it was completely bald and the skin had an Asian grey complexion to it. I could just really judge the dimensions of it because of the impossible nature of its arrival. I would plead to my parents to just believe me, or let me sleep with them, or simply just explore the knothole, tear down the walls. But they would just dismiss me every time, usually telling me I was being childish, that it was just a nightmare, and it would eventually stop. One night, I decided I wasn't going to hide anymore. I was going to face the thing that came from the walls, figure out what it wanted. I was terrified, but resolute. I woke up like all the other nights, listening intently to the eerie clicking sound, staring at the knothole with absolute concentration, swallowing deeply as the hole started to widen, and choking back my fear when the appealing head squeezed through and landed on the ground with a thump, and I stared in horror as a tiny, underdeveloped body writhed on the floor, struggling with the weight of its oversized head. I let out a scream then. I just couldn't hold it anymore. The creature raised his head strenuously, like an alerted animal, and stared directly at me. There was holes. Nothing but holes. The mouth was a yawning chasm of nothing. The nose and eyes were just the same. Just endless abyssal rifts. I screamed again, this time probably loud enough to wake up the entire neighborhood. My mom says she still has nightmares about that scream, and she will easily admit it froze her blood to ice. My parents came running into the room in a hysterical frenzy, only to find me alone, curled up on the floor in the fetus position, screaming my lungs out. It took them hours to calm me down, and they said I only spoke nonsensical gibberish. They took me to my aunt's for a few days, but eventually I was forced to sleep in my own room again. The ritual continued. I woke up, stared at the hole until the head emerged, then hid under my sheets for the remainder of the conscious night. I was slowly but surely getting used to it. I still told my parents about it, but they still wouldn't believe me. I know it sounds horrible, but you have to understand, they were still dealing with the death of Josh. They simply had no energy to indulge my self-inducing traumas. But at some point, I got used to it too. But at some point, I got too used to it. I simply stopped waking up. The sound no longer bothered me, and I would just sleep through it. Problem solved, right? I certainly thought so. Until I woke up one night with the thing on top of me, staring right in my face. Those endless, abyssal eyes swirling away. That gaping chasm of a mouth hovering inches above me. I was too mortified to scream, my body now somehow unable to move at all. As an adult, I could have simply written it off to some extreme form of sleep paralysis, if it wasn't for the next spot. Full-smelling black liquid started pouring from the creature's orifices, completely covering, drowning my face in it. My mouth was filling with the awfulness of it, and at the same point, I swallowed some, just to catch my breath. The taste was that of death, of decay and rot. I was panicking, desperately trying to move, scream, do anything at all. But I couldn't. I was trapped. And sooner or later, I just passed out. I woke up in a pond of black liquid. I showed my parents the full stuff and explained what had happened. My dad said he had seen some of the leakage around the house, so it must have been of that. Just some still, purred water seeping through the roof. I resigned them from even asking them anything again. They simply couldn't be trusted. We moved a couple of years later. I would see the creature every night, but I made sure to set an alarm so that I never had to wake up to the horrible creature's face ever again. But now I was free. I thought happily. We were getting along better as a family, and we were finally moving away from that cursed place. And for months I felt wonderful. I had a semblance of life again, of freedom, of joy. But then, one night, I woke up to the soft sound of clicking. I sat up and scanned the walls, and there it was, a tiny knothole, and a head squeezing through it. Moving didn't help at all. The creature followed me. Wherever I went, I'd be free for a couple of months, tops. Then I would wake up to that sound, and that head. Every once in a while, I would slip through it, and wake up with the ashen grey face inches from my own. Liquid would pour, and I would swallow it. Then I'd wake up in a pond, with no one there to believe me. I grew up depressed, stressed, unhinged, half mad. Somehow, I made it through school, college, and even got a job. But it would never feel good. I could never feel joy. I could never connect with another human being ever again. The creature wouldn't let me. It slowly drained the life from me. When I was 25, my doctor told me that my psychological age was that of a 5-year-old. Smart exercising, he said. One day, 3 years ago, I went back to the place where it all started. I had known for years already, maybe even always, what caused it, what brought it to me, what it was, but I could never take it in, even admit to it, never confess, and that was always the reason for my punishment. I stood by the gaping chasm of the abandoned dried up well where Josh had fallen in, staring into the depths. I remembered every moment of the day, every detail vividly. I remember playing hide and seek. I remember hiding behind the garage. I remember seeing Josh looking for me around the well. He stood so close, so dangerously close. Then I remembered how mad I was at him for eating the last of the cereal, and I remember creeping up behind him and pushing him with all my might. Then an endlessly long drop, a loud crunch, a blood-curdling snap. "I'm sorry, Josh," I then said. "I didn't mean to do it. I thought it was just water." But his vengeance is endless. Endless like that drop. Endless like the black of the creature's eyes. Endless like my suffering. I will go to sleep tonight. Every night. Forever. And it will come from the walls.